Starfield is an upcoming space exploration RPG that has seemingly turned the gaming world upside down. Despite not actually being out yet, Starfield has already become the #1 most wishlist game on Steam. For those of you who don't know, Starfield is being developed by Bethesda, and more specifically, Bethesda Game Studios with Todd Howard as the director. This is important because every single game that Todd Howard has ever directed has been really good. I think people oftentimes don't understand how Bethesda works, and because Todd Howard is the face of Bethesda, they think that every game that has a Bethesda logo in the introduction or title sequence of the game is a game made by Bethesda, and a game made by Todd Howard. This is not true. Games like Prey, Deathloop, The Evil Within, Wolfenstein, Dishonored, Doom were not made by Bethesda Game Studios. They're just being published by Bethesda Publishing. It's a whole complicated ordeal of parent companies and mergers or whatever, and I don't want to get into that too much. But what I'm really trying to say is that games made by BGS and games made with Todd Howard as the director have been these incredible industry-changing hits at times. There is good reason to be hyped for a new BGS game, whatever that game may be. So when the game is finally announced, and it's a space exploration RPG with over 1,000 explorable planets, with seemingly stunning graphics, incredible combat, interesting characters and story, it's very easy for anyone to get carried away in the hype and not look at Starfield through an objective lens, and say, hey, looking at all the factual information, the facts that we have at our disposal, is this likely to be a good game? Now, I have my own personal problems with Starfield, and I'll get to those later in the video, but first I want to use a basic checklist made by one of my favorite YouTubers that can be used to find out if a game is going to suck or not. It's not perfect, and not like the definitive list to look at, but it's a good starting point for the video. First on the list is developer reputation and knowledge. Are the developers known for creating high-quality games? Additionally, does Starfield share similar mechanics to their previous successful titles? Recently, Bethesda hasn't had too great of a reputation, as we all know, with the horrendous release of Fallout 76, reselling of decade-old games, the Creation Club, collector's editions, mobile games, and monetization of mods. Fallout 76 in particular was just this huge blunder that made the general player base completely distrust Bethesda. Additionally, it's worth noting that many BGS games, irrespective of review scores, have launched with significant game-breaking bugs. Now, when it comes to bugs, I think it's important to note that Bethesda have been working on this game for far longer than they've ever worked on any other game in the past. They've been working on this game for 8 years. Starfield has essentially been their primary focus for that long, 8 years, with Fallout 76 kind of being a side project to make them some money, with just a large gap in between major game releases. The simple fact that they've been working on it for a lot longer than their other games does bring a bit of reassurance, but it could just be a sign of development hell. We really have no way of knowing. It is also worth noting that Starfield was ready to launch back in 2021, but because Bethesda was bought by Microsoft, they were able to be given more time, and as a result they were given nearly 2 more years of development time on top of an already finished game. Again, we have no way to know if things were just horrible and nothing was working, so they were forced to delay Starfield for years. So it's really just down to your own personal interpretation of things. Do you honestly believe Todd Howard when he tells you that this is the least buggy game they've ever produced? I mean, this was the man that told thousands of people that Fallout 76 had 16 times the detail of Fallout 4.
It is 4 times the size of Fallout 4. And this time it features all new rendering, lighting, and landscape technology. It allows us to have 16 times the detail and even view distant weather systems across the map.
I personally think that Fallout 76 was just a cash grab, like in a good way. Like, I don't actually think that Fallout 76 was ever their main focus or priority, and I believe that Starfield will probably be a lot less buggy than other BGS games because it would just ruin Xbox's reputation if this was another Fallout 76. I also don't think that Starfield is all that different from Fallout or Skyrim, honestly. I know that sounds crazy because of the changes in setting and tone, but Bethesda is very, very familiar with gun combat, melee combat, world exploration, RPG mechanics, telling compelling stories through games. All the main core features of Starfield are present in their other games. Even the procedural generation. If you go all the way back to the second Elder Scrolls game, Daggerfall, released in 1996, the world was over 1,000 times bigger than any of the other, even current games, because they just had these entirely procedurally generated areas that spanned most of the map. Starfield just seems to be an ambitious expansion of these mechanics. taking them to the extreme, as opposed to something entirely new that Bethesda has no familiarity with. We find gunplay from Fallout, we find melee combat from Skyrim, we find magic from the Elder Scrolls, we find story from Fallout 4, we find RPG mechanics from all the other games, and most importantly, in Starfield's case, better and simply more procedural generation. The next few points can easily just be crossed off the list. Starfield isn't a live service game, it isn't a Ubisoft game, and it isn't being made by a group of developers who left a big studio to recapture lightning in a bottle. As a result, we can quickly jump to the 5th item on the list. Which is, are higher-ups leaving, and is the game in development hell? For higher-ups leaving, I couldn't really find anything for Bethesda. Tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, but the only thing I could really find was just one Bethesda artist leaving to go indie, and some CEO from Tango Gameworks who work under Bethesda, but obviously have no affiliation with Starfield. Nothing alarming there. For development hell, I really couldn't find anything to prove this. Starfield has been in development for a long time, but it's almost completely understandable when you look at the scope and the size of the game and what it tries to accomplish. And plus, the reason these two items are in the same category is mostly because you kind of have to look at the long development time and higher-ups leaving in tandem with each other as a sort of confirmation for development hell. Like for example, if Todd Howard left BGS 6 months ago after already having Starfield in development for 7 years, it'd be a clear sign of development hell, because for what other reason would he leave at a time like that? If the game was 2 years in development and he left then, it wouldn't really be a sign of anything. And as it is now, with it understandably being in development for a long time and no higher-ups leaving, those two pieces can't be put together, so it'd just be incorrect to say that we know for sure that it was in development hell. Sixth on the list is trailers and previews. For one, are the trailers only CG or in-engine trailers? And two, does the game have a definitive release date yet? For Starfield, the answer to all of these questions is no. We have been given extensive gameplay and deep dives, showing a good amount of in-game footage and a definitive release date to go along with it. Last but not least, we have hype. This one was more of a reminder to temper your expectations and start to be a little bit more skeptical and rational about a game that you're excited for, as opposed to being swept off your feet by the hype. Starfield is the most hyped up game since Cyberpunk, and part of what I'm trying to do with this video is kind of rationally put our hype and crazy expectations to the side, and talk about how some of these seemingly amazing features may end up practically translating into a game world. The biggest thing that most people look at when evaluating and predicting how enjoyable Starfield's gameplay loop will be is the procedural generation and what I will call specialized content. The developers have kind of recognized this, so they spent a long time explaining just how much handcrafted content is going to be in the game and explaining just how they're going to implement it in the game. In Starfield, there are a set of areas, dungeons, like these handcrafted levels or areas if that makes sense. Places for people to explore that the developers designed completely by hand. These pieces of handcrafted content will then be almost randomly put onto the worlds, and excluding main story missions, no two players will have an outpost or area for them to take down in the same exact spot on the same exact planet. These handcrafted areas are kind of randomly placed onto these procedural areas. Some people may have a certain type of outpost only on a random mountain on the 76th planet they'll explore, while others may get that same exact outpost right after landing in the middle of a valley on their second explored planet. This is kind of a double-edged sword, because while I'm sure that they've designed it in a way so that no player will really have to be deprived of content for a while just because of RNG, but you'll still probably end up with situations where one player explores planets in the perfect order and their RNG is just right, so that they end up loving the game and thinking it was masterful game design to place a specific type of area 5 minutes away from another area and in a specific way so that you explore one before the other with perfect pacing in between them, that it taught this example player all the right things in the right order and made the player completely fall in love with the game. Another player may be handed the 5 worst areas and the 5 least worked on areas in the game in a row, and they'd have no idea that they were simply just dealt a bad hand by RNG. And as a result, they probably wouldn't like the game all that much. Again, I'm sure Bethesda has some system in place to make it so there is some sort of locked-in mechanism or way these areas are shown to the player. In my best case scenario, I want them to be micromanaging what content they show me around wherever I choose to go. For example, let's say Bethesda want people to explore Area Z, then Area H, then Area C. ZHC. I want there to be some sort of system in place to where I get introduced to Area Z within a certain amount of in-game units of walking on my first planet, like 300 meters from your landing point or something. And then, once I experience that bit of content, Area Z in this case, I may decide I want to immediately leave the planet. When I do that, I may be presented with Area H after walking 200 meters on my next explored planet. Another player may stay on the first planet and encounter Area H after walking a similar distance, but not actually changing planets. I want them to create this sort of guided experience without the player knowing it. Show me these areas in a specific order. Introduce certain loot types to me in a specific order to guide my gameplay experience. Whatever. But make it so that I don't know that's what's happening. In my opinion, something like that would be a great balance between expansive, procedurally generated exploration and a level of specialized, handcrafted content. The biggest or most popular Starfield comparison out there is probably No Man's Sky. When Starfield was first announced and we were getting details about it for the first time, people were going, I don't know man, this game sounds a lot like No Man's Sky. And No Man's Sky is an awesome video game, purely from a spectacle standpoint. It's awesome that there's so many planets to explore, and it's awesome that the game gives you this kind of sandbox experience where you can explore the universe in whatever order you want to. The main missions aren't really a requirement, and this level of specialized content isn't really there as much. There's a lot more RNG involved in whether or not you like the game. I hope Starfield learns from a game like this, and gives the player this specialized content often without them knowing it. Still, even if Starfield was able to do this to a T, there still would be a lack of specialized content to an extent. For example, in Skyrim, and for the marketing for Skyrim, Todd Howard says the thing.
That mountain is not just a backdrop. You can walk all the way to the top of that mountain.
That mountain is not just a backdrop. You can walk all the way to the top of that mountain. And then in Starfield Direct, he says this.
That moon is actually there orbiting the planet. Yes, you can visit it too.
That isn't just a backdrop. That moon is actually there orbiting the planet. Yes, you can visit it too. The difference in how this practically appears in the video game is kind of glaringly obvious, and you probably know what I'm about to say. You don't need to be an expert in game design to kind of put the pieces together. In Skyrim, when you leave a specific area, even though it's an open world game and you can go anywhere, when you see a giant mountain in front of you, that's the only thing in sight, you will want to visit that mountain. The developers know this, and they very intentionally do something like that. They sneakily place something in front of you that they almost certainly know will catch your interest. And then when you do climb the mountain, there is something up there. A main mission, a side mission, an item, a bit of lore, whatever it is. There's something there sitting atop that massive backdrop, and it's unique to that mountain. In Starfield, there will be so many situations like this. Everything is so beautiful and shiny, and its procedural generation system is so advanced that there are going to be things that will catch your eye that not a single developer who actually worked on the game has ever even seen before. These are planet-sized planets, and nobody can explore every single bit of every single planet. When Todd Howard says that the moon is actually there, you can visit it too, he may be telling on himself a little bit. Yes, that moon is actually there, but how much of it is actual content? If you're on planet 769 and you see a giant moon in the distance that's, I don't know, twice the size of the actual planet or something, and it catches your eye, there is no main mission up there, and I can tell you that for a fact. All these side missions or items there were randomly placed there. There will be no unique items. There will be nothing to reward your curiosity that you couldn't find on almost any other planet. Yes, that moon is there, and yes, it may immediately catch the player's interest, like, oh, I want to go there. I want to explore that moon. In Skyrim, when you see a mountain, you think the same thing. But the difference is that in Skyrim, everything, every little mountain, valley, every area is specifically tailored to make you want to go to those specific places to do certain things. And the player is rewarded when you do those things. In Starfield, the procedural generation may just be far too wondrous for its own good. I worried that it might be too good at creating compelling looking places. But after playing for a while, you would know beyond a shadow of a doubt that however awesome that planet may look, it would literally take a year of real, live time to cross it, and even then, you might find nothing unique to that planet. No unique bit of content. Anyways, that's my main major gripe with Starfield. That's my main concern about the actual gameplay loop, after believing the developers. After believing that Starfield isn't going to be a buggy mess, and believing it's going to have great graphics and smooth performance, even though it's locked to 30 on consoles and can't have vehicles because the engine simply can't keep up, I believe Todd Howard. No matter how many times he's lied to people in the past, no matter how many times Xbox and Bethesda have screwed people over, I believe these devs, and I believe the excitement in their eyes when they tell you about this awesome thing they worked on. But at the end of the day, I'm supposed to feel that way. Starfield Direct, despite literally being a 50-minute presentation that goes extremely in-depth into every system in the game, it's just a marketing thing. It's what they want you to see. If this game ends up actually being an absolute disaster at launch, We would have no way of knowing from the direct because they obviously cherry-picked the best clips to make their game look as good as possible. And on top of that, who's to say they aren't just lying about certain features or over-exaggerating to the extreme, like they have done in the past? I'm not trying to kill your hopes and dreams right now, but think about it like this. In the Starfield Direct, which was 45 minutes, I'd say at most maybe 35 minutes of that was actual gameplay, with developer interviews being shown for a large portion. And a lot of this is cut up gameplay. I'm sure they didn't show a single gameplay segment for more than 2 minutes at a time, and even then, there's no way they showed more than like 10 or 20 seconds of just raw gameplay without someone talking while the gameplay is going on. People are so sure that Starfield won't be a failure because we got this quote-unquote gameplay deep dive, and we have so much footage to look at. Compare this to Cyberpunk. I know how Cyberpunk was launched, you know it too, your mom knows it, your dog knows it, everybody knows how bad Cyberpunk launched, so I don't think I need to explain that. But Cyberpunk had 48 minutes of pure, raw gameplay footage that was a walkthrough gameplay trailer thing that was released 2 years before the game actually launched. Whatever gameplay footage we have now, whatever actual objective like factual data and information that we have now, not the devs saying it has less bugs than other games, not them saying it's the most polished work yet, just the actual gameplay reveal has people so hyped for the game's launch, and they think it's going to be a perfect game because we got 30 minutes of gameplay from different points in the game. How could you not? Cyberpunk fans had this too, to the extreme. 48 minutes of solid gameplay footage from the early sections of the game, and it looked awesome. And when the game came out and we got to actually play through that same exact part of the game almost 2 years later, it was an absolute disaster and nothing like the gameplay footage. Starfield's gameplay trailers and showcases can also be compared to No Man's Sky's gameplay trailers despite the difference in length. It was shots like these that got people so excited about the game. First, they showed that beautiful underwater area. Just that was enough for most people to get interested in the game. And then after that, they hooked people on the concept of infinite planets with sequences like these, where they show 5 vastly different areas in the span of 5 seconds. Even though only 5 areas were shown, and they were shown for a split second, that gets people excited, because they know that within that 1 second of gameplay is thousands of hours of entertainment. 5 planet-sized sandboxes for the player to explore and have fun in. 5 biomes being shown in 5 seconds gives the illusion that there are so many, and they're literally just giving us quick 1-second glances at just a few of the biomes. They didn't lie to us in the original trailer. There were more than 5 biomes. There were 11 to be precise. But in a game like this, with 18 quintillion planets, 11 biomes isn't enough, and the game feels stale as a result. Off of just the top of my head, the Starfield Direct and all the trailers we've gotten combined probably add together to be around 2 hours long. They've shown maybe over 30 planets in that 2-hour time span, and all the quick flashes of the menus and, oh look, water can be radioactive, that's so cool, and they only showed it for a second. It's entirely possible that all the planets that were shown are all the planet types that are in the game. Because we were shown so much so quickly, it might make the game seem bigger than it is. We assume there will be fully water planets, we assume there will be fully poison planets, we assume all these things that we haven't actually been confirmed with the developers, and as a result, our expectations get even higher than what the devs have actually explicitly told us. Again, that's not our fault, that's what the devs want us to think. That's the point of a marketing Starfield Direct. It's all marketed in that specific way to get us to feel specific things. Despite all my problems and concerns with Starfield's gameplay loop, I can't deny that they've done an excellent job at marketing it. Whether you love it or hate it, whether Starfield comes out and is the greatest game of all time or the worst, you can't deny that the Starfield Direct, the interviews, the trailers, it's all a masterclass on how to market your video game. You're watching a presentation, and it's built in a way to capture attention and get you hyped about Starfield. I think we should all just temper our expectations a little bit and think about how these systems will practically appear in the game world, as I've said so many times at this point. But I can't deny that this just all seems so awesome. And at the end of the day, to answer the question I posed in the title of this video, will Starfield be any good? The answer is found in whether or not you, on an individual level, genuinely believe everything that was stated in the marketing for this game. For me, I believe most of it, so I am and I will continue to be hyped for Starfield, and if I'm disappointed at release, it won't be that bad, because I'm at least accepting failure as a possibility before the game actually launches. Just don't pre-order. Wait a week before, or three days before launch, wait for, do whatever you have to do to see fully fledged reviews from multiple sources before actually buying the game. I cannot stress that enough. This is unscripted right now. I thought of this. Just don't pre-order the game. Please don't pre-order the game. Anyways, if you liked watching this video, then it'd be great if you could like the video or subscribe to the channel, because I'll have another video just like this 1 week after this is being published. I also have a Elden Ring critique type thing, so if you're into that, go watch that. It's my most recent video since like 9 months ago, so yeah.